When you look at a world map, Greenland appears like a silent, white, sleeping giant covered in ice. However, beneath that deceptive silence, the footsteps of one of the world's greatest military crises can now be heard. In January 2026, we woke up to one of the greatest geopolitical risks in modern history, a potential tectonic shift.
I want to make it clear that if the United States chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything stops.
The NATO alliance is on the brink of a collapse scenario, not because of Russian tanks or Chinese missiles, but because its own members are taking positions against each other. Donald Trump's threat to take Greenland, by beauty or by force,
one way or the other, we're going to have Greenland,
has triggered an unprecedented state of alarm in Europe.
In today's spotlight, several European nations are pushing back on President Trump's threats of a U.S. takeover in Greenland. The leaders of France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, and the UK, along with the Danish government, publishing a statement.
For the first time in history, Germany, France, and the Scandinavian countries are sending military shipments to Greenland in response to Washington's possible moves. The Pentagon is stunned. Brussels is on edge. Rare earth elements, the GI-UK gap, the European-Chinese alliance, and the paradox of NATO's Article 5, all are on the table, and things don't seem to be going well for Trump. From Russia to China, from America to Europe, a new world order is being built on the Arctic ice. It all started with a single sentence from the Oval Office in Washington. Donald Trump, setting aside diplomatic courtesy, laid his intentions, or rather his threat, for Greenland on the table.
So we're going to be doing something with Greenland, either the nice way or the more difficult way.
Trump's statement, "I would like to make a deal the easy way, but if we can't do it the easy way, we'll have to do it the hard way." This was the declaration of the moment when diplomacy was suspended and the risk of chaos was put on the table. And while the world waited to see how Denmark would respond, unprecedented military activity began to be observed along that nerve line stretching from Copenhagen to Berlin, from Paris to Stockholm. For the first time in history, Europe may be activating its defense reflexes against a perceived threat from Washington. Right now, in the freezing waters of the North Atlantic, German reconnaissance teams, French naval units, and Scandinavian special forces are positioning themselves not to stop the Russians, but with the possibility of building a wall of ice against a possible American intervention. On the morning of January 14, 2026, the Pentagon was stunned. Europe was not there to respond to its every move. Germany was deciding to send military troops to Greenland after Trump's statements. This can be interpreted as one of the most radical and assertive military steps taken by Germany since World War II. The operation was named Icy Resolve, and Berlin was not alone. The Swedish Prime Minister officially announced that Swedish Armed Forces personnel had begun deploying to Greenland at Denmark's request. Sweden, whose NATO membership ink has barely dried, is cementing its presence in the north by deploying not only its officers, but also its CV-90 armored combat vehicles, known as Masters of Winter Conditions, and Archer artillery systems to the Greenland ice sheets. The German army, the Bundeswehr, is going far beyond the vision of that special 13-person reconnaissance team roaming the streets of Nuuk, establishing the infrastructure for a permanent Arctic Sentinel mission, with Eurodrone systems capable of staying airborne for over 18 hours and commanding a range of 500 kilometers. Shortly thereafter, the Netherlands and Canada also decided to send military units to Greenland. The differences of opinion within the alliance were turning into a physical split. This is definitely not a symbolic flag race. Support from France was not long in coming. Emmanuel Macron stated that if the sovereignty of a European country were threatened, it would trigger a chain reaction, announcing that France would join Germany and support the defense of Greenland. France's deployment of nuclear-capable Rafale jets, with a massive combat radius of 1,850 kilometers to the region, is taking Europe's deterrence to the stratosphere. What really changes the game is the UK's entry into the scene. While London is pounding the table with plans to deploy Royal Navy ships and fighter jets to the region against the Russian and Chinese threat, Canada's 9,000-kilometer range CP-140 Aurora patrol aircraft are keeping the skies clear. Here, we need to analyze the situation on the ground technically. The troops being sent are not symbolic peacekeeping forces. The plan by the UK, France, and Germany to send troops to Greenland under the name of a NATO mission is actually a deterrent and a clear "we are here" message. The stance of Danish Prime Minister Frederiksen and the Greenland administration was clear. Greenland Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen charted his diplomatic course, saying,
"And if we have to choose between the United States and Denmark here and now, we choose Denmark. We choose the Kingdom of Denmark. We choose the EU."
It is a historic turning point that the German army has set aside its famous reluctance policy and deployed its special forces, capable of operating at -40 degrees, to a region where tensions are running high with its closest ally, the US.